Hello, my name is Olurotimi Osha. Today is July the 16th, 2026, and we're still in a very tense immigration environment with ICE raids and, of course, with the Trump administration vowing to increase denaturalizations by as much as 100 to 200 cases per month, right? So that is. That's an escalation, huge escalation from the average of 11 denaturalizations a year. But at the same time, that's still a trickle in contrast to the approximately 800,000 naturalizations that occur a year, right? So about 800,000 people become naturalized U.S. citizens a year. There are currently about 26 million naturalized U.S. citizens. So uh, it's still a trickle, right, compared to those who are, naturalized as citizens in the U.S., right? So the denaturalization is still a trickle. By the way, to be clear, because people tend to conflate the denaturalization process. So denaturalization is for those people who did something, right? They did something prior to them being naturalized, right? So whatever you do, whether it's a crime you do after you've been naturalized, it doesn't affect your citizenship, right? A naturalized citizen is an equal citizen with the natural born citizen. It's protected in the 14th Amendment. Remember, the 14th Amendment says all persons born or naturalized in the United States are citizens of the United States, and all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof, and the state wherein they reside are citizens of the United States. So you see, it doesn't make a distinction, right, between the natural born and naturalized citizens. So, and citizenship is permanent, right? It can't be revoked without the voluntary consent of the citizen, of the naturalized citizen, whether they're natural born or they're, naturalized citizens. That was established in the Supreme Court case Afroyim versus versus Rusk, right, in 1967. But so what is the reason for denaturalization? So denaturalization will be for what the uh, the candidates for denaturalization or whatever, right, did before they became naturalized citizens, not for whatever they did after, right? So, for instance, if they obtained that citizenship through fraud, if they lied in their citizenship application, for instance, if they were convicts, if they used a false identity, or if they used a fraudulent immigration benefit, right? If they fraudulently obtained an immigration benefit they didn't qualify for, like the U visa. And I'm going to read that now. So this is a case that I'm going to read from, and that's regarding a fraud scheme in the U visa program in Louisiana. Police chiefs, right? Chiefs of police in Louisiana were involved in uh, selling false, fabricated um, police reports of people having been victims of crimes that never happened, right? So that they could obtain immigration benefits through the U visa program. So the U visa program allows non-citizens who are victims of crime in the U.S. who report it to law enforcement or will work with law enforcement to solve, to investigate and prosecute the crime, and so they're eligible for the U visa. For the U visa, right? It's a temporary visa that gives them lawful status, and after that, they can now file for the green card. They become eligible for the green card. That's a lawful permanent residency. And of course, after that, if they are fined for 5 years, then they become they're eligible for citizenship. And so that's how some people have been naturalized. So we see the case of a man who was involved in a racket in Louisiana with police chiefs in Louisiana. They were selling these false reports, fabricated crime reports certifying that these non-citizens were victims of crimes that never occurred, right, for as much as $5,000 a report. And between 2023 and 2025, when they were caught, they apparently sold about 69 of these fabricated incident and crime reports, right? So that's roughly $345,000. So you see, they're making a lot of money. And these are police chiefs, but they've pled guilty. And rather than just provide you the entire narrative, what I'm going to do is I'm also going to read directly from the Department of Justice announcement. I've been concerned about news articles, you know, circulating about how Americans are now reading, adult Americans, right, are now reading at the level of 10-year-olds. That's 54% of American adults read at the level of 10-year-olds, right? And over 20% of Americans are actually illiterate, right? Over 20% of American adults are completely illiterate. And for those who can read, they are illiterate, right? Illiterate, that means they can read and write, but they do not read and write, right? Of course, we're in the era of high-tech social media, where everybody's just watching a short video, and things like that. Nobody reads anymore. But I don't want to be like that, so I'm going to read. I continue to cultivate the habit of reading, and that's one of the reasons why I do these videos. I read a lot, but I'm going to demonstrate that I can still read. So I'm going to read from the Department of Justice announcement concerning the U visa fraud scheme that police chiefs in Louisiana were involved in. So this is from the United States State's Attorney's Office, the Department of Justice, from Western District of Louisiana, the Western District of Louisiana. So it says, press release: 4 former Oakdale area law enforcement leaders and 1 business owner plead guilty to falsifying police reports and bribery to perpetrate decade-long visa fraud conspiracy. So it's this was released Tuesday, June the 30th, 2026. So that was just about 2 weeks ago. So subtitle, it says, part of Homeland Security Task Force and Operation Take Back America. On June 30, 2026, Glenn Dixon, 62, of Forest Hill, pled guilty in federal court for his role in a decade-long scheme involving bribery and a conspiracy to commit visa fraud and mail fraud after his 4 co-conspirators, Chandrakant Patel, 40, of Oakdale, Chad Doyle, 55, of Oakdale, Michael Slaney, 64, of Oakdale, and Thibault Onishia, 38, of Glenmora, each pled guilty to the same in recent weeks. The defendants were originally indicted on July the 2nd, 2025. Dixon, Doyle, Onishia, and Slaney each face up to 5 years in prison. Patel faces up to 20 years in federal prison. At the same time of the offenses, 4 of the defendants were serving in high-profile law enforcement positions: Doyle as Oakdale Chief of Police, Slaney as Oakdale Marshal for Ward 5, Dixon as Forest Hill Chief of Police, and Onishia as Glenmora Chief of Police. Patel was a business owner. These defendants' disgraceful fraud endangered our community and undermined the public trust in the immigration system solely to line their own pockets, said United States Attorney Zachary A. Keller. These guilty pleas confirm the depth of corruption uncovered here and the strength of the evidence developed during an incredible investigation by our law enforcement partners working together, and our office looks forward to advocating for prison time for each defendant that reflects the seriousness of the crimes they committed. HSI is committed to protecting the integrity of our immigration system and lawful immigration benefits, said Matt Wright, acting special agent in charge of Homeland Security investigations, New Orleans. When anyone, including public officials, exploits immigration relief programs or commits fraud against the government, HSI and our law enforcement partners will investigate, dismantle these schemes, and work to bring those responsible to justice. These guilty pleas demonstrate accountability for officials who breach public trust and misuse federal systems, said Internal Revenue Service Criminal Investigations Special Agent in Charge Demetrius Hardman of the IRS CI Atlanta Field Office. This case shows how IRS Criminal Investigation special agents tracked the funds, uncovered irregularities, and dismantled the network. Mr. Patel and his law enforcement co-conspirators corrupted the process that helps actual victims of violent crime to allow people to remain in our country under an alleged fraud, said Special Agent in Charge Jonathan Tapp of the FBI's New Orleans field office. The FBI will continue to work with our federal partners and the U.S. Attorney's Office to ensure people who engage in this type of corrupt criminal activity are brought to justice. The case involves the abuse of U non-immigrant status, or U visas. Congress created the U visa with the passage of the Victims of Trafficking and Violent Protection Act in October 2000. The legislation was intended to strengthen the ability of law enforcement agencies to investigate and prosecute crime while also protecting victims of crimes who are willing to help law enforcement authorities in the investigation or prosecution of that criminal activity. Foreign nationals are eligible for a U visa if they meet certain criteria, including but not limited to if they were a victim of qualifying criminal activity that occurred in or violated laws of the United States or possessed information about the criminal activity. According to court documents, the defendants engaged in U visa fraud from December 2015 through July 2025 by fabricating police reports that falsely documented armed robberies that never occurred and then providing these fictitious reports to non-citizens who used them to support fraudulent U visa applications. The foreign nationals pursuing U visa would pay Patel thousands of dollars to be named as victims in these fabricated incidents, and Patel then secured false police reports by coordinating with defendants Doyle, Stanley, Dixon, and Onicia, each of whom used their positions in law enforcement to certify the fraudulent reports. Court records also show that Patel attempted to bribe an agent of the Rapids Parish Sheriff's Office with $5,000 in February 2025 to obtain such a report. In addition, the defendants submitted falsified documents via the U.S. Postal Service and other carriers, constituting additional mail fraud charges. U.S. Attorney Zachary A. Keller for the Western District of Louisiana made the announcement. This case was investigated by Homeland Security Investigations, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Internal Revenue Service, Criminal Investigation, and U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, Fraud Detection, and National Security Division as part of the Homeland Security Task Force under Operation Take Back America. This case has been prosecuted by Assistant U.S. Attorney John W. Nickel and Danny Sifka, with assistance from paralegal specialists Joan Henry Mills and Denise Dahan. So there you go. That's the Department of Justice announcement. Just a little bit more for more context, additional information. So I was going and digging up additional information, and so this is an example of someone who's eligible for denaturalization, and that's the business owner, Mr. Patel. I read it in another piece of news, in another news article, that he himself had profited from these fraudulent U visa applications. That was how he got his green card, and he's in the process of having his immigration status revoked as well. So let me read from this. Louisiana police chief becomes last of 5 defendants to plead guilty in immigration fraud scheme. In the case, a businessman allegedly paid 3 Louisiana police chiefs and a police marshal to create false violent crime reports naming immigrants as victims. And this is from July 1st. Let me see what date. Yes, July the 1st, 2026. A small town police chief admitted Tuesday to pocketing thousands of dollars in kickbacks to churn out bogus police reports, marking the fourth and final lawman to plead guilty in an immigration fraud case at his Royal Central Louisiana since it became public last year. Former Forest Hills police chief Glenn Dixon, one of four cops charged last summer under what federal prosecutors called a years-long scheme to profit from bogus visa applications, entered a guilty plea Tuesday on a single count of conspiracy to commit visa fraud, court records show. An attorney listed in court records as representing Dixon, Kevin Stockstill, did not immediately respond to an email and phone message. The former chief initially denied the charges for which he was arrested last July, alongside three other lawmen and an Oakdale-based businessman. Federal prosecutors in a 62-count indictment accused the businessman Chandrakant Patel of illicitly paying Dixon plus Glen Morris Police Chief Thibault Onisha, Oakdale Police Chief Chad Doyle, and Oakdale Marshal Michael Slaney to churn out bogus reports naming immigrants as violent crime victims. The immigrants then used the reports to apply for U visas, papers for crime victims who cooperate with police investigations with United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, prosecutors said. In an affidavit filed Tuesday in Alexandria federal court, Dixon admitted to generating at least 69 doctored reports for Patel between August 2023 and July 2025. But prosecutors said the broader scheme may have started years earlier. Immigrants paid Patel himself, the recipient of U visa issued in 2023, $20,000 to obtain a police report for them, prosecutors say. He then paid the lawmen around $5,000 per bogus report they generated. The resultant paper was what looked like a wave of violent crime across a typically sleepy swath of central Louisiana. Forest Hill, the Rapids Parish hamlet where Dixon was chief, has a population of just over 600, according to census data. Agents from U.S. Homeland Security Investigations, the FBI, and the Internal Revenue Service's Criminal Investigations Arm caught on when U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services flagged the huge flare in U.S. visa applications with corresponding police reports from the sparsely populated rural area, officials have said. Doyle, Onisha, Slaney, and Patel each pleaded guilty recently under agreements with the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Western District of Louisiana in several court hearings that came in quick succession, records show. In Patel's plea agreement from May 28, he admitted to orchestrating the scheme for at least 5 years beginning in 2020. He sought law enforcement collaborators to supply and certify the reports needed for U visa applications, his agreement says. He admitted to using proceeds from the scheme to buy gold bars, a Swiss ingot watch, rings, several central Louisiana properties, and other items. The indictment and subsequent plea deals landed as President Donald Trump's administration has deprioritized federal law enforcement's focus on public corruption and white-collar criminal investigations, focusing instead on its broad immigration crackdown, plus violent crime and drug trafficking enforcement. Still, law enforcement agents who investigated the Central Louisiana case called the wave of guilty pleas a sign of accountability for public officials who breach the public trust. When anyone, including public officials, exploits immigration relief programs or commits fraud against the government, HSI and our law enforcement partners will investigate dismantle these schemes and work to bring those responsible to justice, said Matt Wright, HSI's New Orleans-based acting special agent in charge. By admitting guilt, Patel acknowledged in his plea agreement that he faces revocation of his immigration status and deportation. So these are the people that are getting denaturalized and deported. People who, you see, it's not because of what he did after, but if you notice, he also obtained a U visa, right? That was how he obtained his lawful immigration status, through a U visa scheme as well. He committed fraud, right? So he lied, he obtained it fraudulently, and that's why he's facing revocation and deportation, right? So I hope this helps for people concerned about the immigration status thing. Now, I was a victim of a criminal alien named Germa Shumi on May 14, 2023, and I see that there's a police, so Montgomery County Police Officer Sergeant Charles Drangwitz filed a fabricated police incident report of a crime I never committed. I was the one who was a victim of a crime, but he misrepresented that Germa Shumi, who assaulted me with Jide Warere, that's Howard University Police, Howard University finance professor, that these guys were the victims, right, of a crime. Germa Shumi can't speak a word of English, so I could see that his what was in it for him, right? I've never spoken with him before. I never assaulted him. He was one who assaulted me. What was in it for him for fabricating a peace order, right? An ex parte peace order in which he fabricated what happened. And then the police officer, Sergeant Charles Drangwitz, supplied him a fabricated incident report. Charles Drangwitz has since retired. That's what they do. He retired under 60. They commit crimes, and when they're on their investigation, they retire. This is in Montgomery County. So this is what Germa Shumi was angling for, right? He had his certified fraudulent victim of a bogus crime that never happened. Instead, he's the criminal. So I hope that the Department of Justice, Homeland Security, whoever it is, FBI, will immediately go after the criminal Germa Shumi and his co-conspirators, Sergeant Charles Drangwitz and Howard University Professor Jide Warere. My name is Olurotimi Osha. I'll keep you posted. Thank you.